historically, yes, they had hives there when that was built. And the butterfly pavilion kept some hives there, but then they moved them all out. So now they're getting
easily gone for several changes.
They want to start a bee club in that area. Well, there's a big gap here between Southeast and Highlands, and the next one up north is what? Mile High Bee Club? And they meet downtown. I used to be a member of that when I first started. That was too tough. It's too hard going downtown.
Well, so if you're like in northern Aurora, you don't have any place to go.
Yeah.
You can go down there, you go to Mount. But in northern Colorado, and they're like Fort Collins.
There's so many beekeepers up there.
That area
That's saturated. Yeah.
Well, you'll be bored. I'm giving my talk.
You guys ever use these?
On the log beekeeping. No. Have you heard that one?
Yeah, I think I did.
I mean, they're also nice, but
well, I
they don't seem practical to me.
Because every time I get up there, I get so freaking nervous.
Oh, you're really good.
I'm just curious. I mean, I think the reason they exist is you're not supposed to put metal in your honey.
But yeah, and that's the thing.
But if I'm going to put it right in my tea immediately,
and I feel bad.
what does the metal do?
I
might.
That's not me.
I might be missing
That's not
something.
me. Like for these positions that you guys always take and stuff, that's not me. It's one thing I travel a lot.
Because then we love to hear you talk about the snowball board, splitting hives.
Yeah, well, as I understand it, the way you're supposed to use these is you leave it in the honey,
That's what we draw.
you dribble it off, you put it back in the honey.
I started something new.
Whereas with the
condensing hive.
spoon, you
Oh yeah, well, you showed
take
me
it and you put it in the tea, and then it melts in the tea, and then you don't use the same spoon again in the honey.
Oh really?
I mean, that's how I do it.
She
So
said, this is an experiment. You had one that was.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was like that sawdust in there was just
wet.
so.
honey dippers? I don't know.
And then it has this problem. It's just like I'm trying to get in this winter. I had a problem with the weak hives that didn't have the bee power for the HVAC to ventilate.
Yeah.
I got mold. But I run slatted racks and it's got that 4-inch shunt.
Right.
So this year I made some modified slatted racks without that shunt. So that vapor.
Do you know who made that?
Down and it dropped down. It just dropped down to the bottom board. But it was
Mark? No, he didn't. He said he didn't make it.
Oh, he didn't make this one? Oh, it's a very common one. I mean, it's, I don't know, he's made them, I've made
This
them.
ain't gonna work.
You can,
But with
get 'em out
that said,
fingers.
they use very little resources. They all had honey at the end. No starvation whatsoever. I didn't have to worry about starvation. They had plenty of
I have a little colony that would fit in that and do just well. They have a queen and a handful of
I
bees.
gotta figure out a way.
Look at that, that's
And
great.
hopefully this modified slatted rack.
Wonderful.
I think what's even cooler about this is it comes with a hive tool.
Yes, very
I
nice.
used to insulate on 3 sides.
So I was just asking who made it.
And that's
It
what
just
I did.
appeared here. I don't know who.
My student
Set it
said,
down.
I can't live with that. So we went to insulate back.
All right, we should probably get started.
But this year I made this. I showed Peter. It's an insulation wrap, and they're cut on 45s, and the 45s are tape cuts. So it hinges. So you got 4 panels that are all hinged, but one hinge is open to the back, so you could open it up to do your order.
We'll get started in 30 seconds or so.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I just threw myself.
All righty. Welcome, everybody, to the November Southeast Beekeeping Club meeting. Thanks for coming. Hope you enjoyed the potluck so far. Hasn't ended yet. Tonight we have a pretty good agenda. We'll talk about the law of beekeeping as our major topic tonight. And then the Colorado State Beekeepers Association summary. We're going to discuss a little bit of that. So we do have a tradition here. How many people, this is your first time ever attending a meeting here? Okay, we got A few? Excellent. Well, would love it if you'd introduce yourselves to the members here and just say your name and, if you have any bees or anything else about that.
My name is Candace Tompkins. We are in Elizabeth, Colorado. We do not have bees yet. We were very, very, very interested in moving down that path.
Okay. Candace and George? All right. Well, welcome to your first meeting tonight. And you guys.
Marty Benjamin, Diana Benjamin, and it's our first time. We live up in southeast Aurora. We have relatives and friends that have done beekeeping. We just have a curiosity. We want to come and check you out.
All righty. Well, welcome everybody.
Peter, there's one over here.
Oh, I missed somebody.
No.
Can't hide. Oh, was it you? Oh, I can't see.
I'm BJ Burnett. I'm from Littleton, and I have one hive. I'm new to this year. So.
And Littleton in one hive?
Yep.
All right. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Yep. So last month we had an event at Tagawa Gardens, and it went really, really well. We had a lot of people show up and volunteer. The family event was, a bunch of different vendors and people showing up and having a good time and explaining things. And I don't know what it is about bees, but people really want to come and see them. So we had a line, and a lot of people here volunteered. So I just wanted to recognize that and thank everybody who came out and had a good time and made a good experience for everybody else. We do have our 2026 board, which we had our elections for last month. As indicated here, I'll retain the presidency. Vice President will be Ann Atkinson, Treasurer Christine Mills, Secretary Janice Cobb, and 3 new at-large board members, Candace Morat, I can never say your last name, I'm so sorry, Moratori, Chris Roybal, and Larry Thielman. And so we'd like to thank you all for volunteering your time, and we're looking forward to working with you all next year. So thank you very much. So we do have an awful lot of people who support us, not on the board, but performing vital functions, as listed here. And I want to thank everybody who has done this in the past. If you're interested in any one of these roles, whether there's a person's name up there or not, feel free to talk to any member of the board or any of these folks and express your interest. Doug is our equipment manager in the back. If you've never met him, there he is. And librarian Cynthia.
Hello.
She's been doing an excellent job there. Our swarm manager, Tim and Cynthia. And Tim's also helping us with videography, which is wonderful. Allows everybody at home to see what we're doing. Website, Candace. Parker Honey Festival. Every year we have the Parker Honey Festival. And typically we have somebody who acts as a liaison. And, anyway, if you're interested in such a thing, reach out to any member of the board. We're looking for apiary managers as well. We do have 2 right now, but we're looking for, making certain that we have a rolling wave of people who are involved in that. And we're looking for a more permanent hospitality host. Several people have volunteered this year to help in that capacity, and so we're very grateful for that. On November 12th, we're going to do Bees and Brews at Honeybrook down in Castle Rock. So if you've never been there before, it's a really nice little environment. It's cozy, and you get, I won't say homemade, but the next best thing to homemade mead, because it's kind of industrial scale, but small industrial scale. So it's really interesting flavors, a lot of different things. to taste, and of course, sit around and talk about bees and other things like that. So great place to socialize. This does require us to RSVP on our website. So if you go to the CSBA website and go to the event, just sign up on the event and say, yes, I'll be there. And the reason for that is that if 100 people show up and the building only holds 40, then we kind of need to manage that. So appreciate it if you would do that. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but you know, our club has a Zazzle site, and if you are interested in, you know, different items with our logo on it, including shirts and hats and mugs and such, we have that. And so the store's URL is down here, and of course we've got a link to this on our SCBA website as well. So great place to get all of our logoed items. And you know, a portion of this does go back into our treasury, which is a nice thing to do. Similarly, the Colorado State Beekeepers Association has a site that also sells merchandise. So if you want to support the Colorado State Beekeepers Association, this is one way that you can do it. All right, so it's November. How many people are still in your hives? You're probably getting to the point where you should not be in your hives. Let them start their winter months and go on about it. But one of the best times to do an oxalic acid treatment is when it's colder, when there's not a lot of brood in there. Anyway, and making certain that your hives are getting fully closed up for the cold months. This is one of the things that we should be doing in November. So our first topic tonight is the law of beekeeping, presented by Ann Atkinson. And she's going to describe how this all works. Well, from the 7th century. It's amazing how long beekeeping has been recorded in the law.
So while Peter cues this up, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Ann Atkinson, and I've been a beekeeper for about 9 years. I've been a lawyer for almost 40 years, and history is a passion of mine. So what I'm going to talk to you about today combines all three of those passions. We, as beekeepers, you know, in this club and in CSBA, we spend a lot of time learning about how to take care of our bees and all of those things. But the lawyer in me gets really twitchy when certain subjects come up. So I want to give you some tools and some information about what you're legally required to do as beekeepers. And I want to end with a proposal that we all talk about refunding our current bee law in Colorado. So that's kind of just an overview of what we're going to talk about. But let's talk about, I have this little thing here. So you know, back in the day, before there was Langstroth hives, which didn't come in, were not invented until the mid-19th century, folks kept bees in lots of different other kinds of containers. What I'm going to be talking about in Ireland, where they were doing this, it was primarily in these sorts of things, these skeps. A skep is just a basket that's been turned over with a little hole in the bottom, and the bees can come and go. Now, what are the problems with that? Well, if you want to harvest honey, how are you going to get the honey out? You can't really inspect, you can't tell what's going on in that hive. They could get really big and swarm. You wouldn't even know what was happening. So there were limitations, but this is what they had to work with. I have a theory of law, and it's not my own theory, but we'll call it my theory for tonight, which is that we write laws about things that are of economic importance to us. One could even argue that criminal law has an economic role, because unless we have a stable society, no one can engage in economic activity, right? So looking at that, I think it's significant that in Ireland, the oldest legal manuscript in Ireland is about bees. Now, why would that be? Well, bees must have been very economically important, and they were, because, of course, honey was the only sweetener that you could get, right? In 7th century Ireland, there was no sugar cane, there were no transportation networks where they could get sugar. So honey was it. If you were going to put sweetener on something, it had to be honey. Honey was also used in medicinal applications, even back into the Egyptian times with the written prescriptions and stuff that they have found in ancient Egyptian scrolls and whatnot. Most of those medicinal prescriptions started with honey. You take honey and then you add this to it and give it to the patient. Or you have this honey and you put something in it and you put it on that person's wound. Lots of applications for honey. And then, of course, mead. There are a lot of people that believe that in the Bible, when it talks about wine, what they were really talking about was mead, because there would have been a limited amount of grapes grown in the Middle East, but honey would probably have been more available than grapes. So something lost in translation when it comes to us as wine. Wax was also crazy important. Now, most people, common people, would light their homes if they wanted light at night. They didn't use wax candles. Those were too expensive. They would use usually some tallow or fat in a little dish with a little wick in it, and that was their light. But they had to give the wax to the church and to the noble people. And so the rich people and the church used wax to make candles. Wax was also used for casting bronze statues. And then it was also used to permeate cloth. And they would use this cloth for lots of different applications. They didn't have saran wrap, right? So if they wanted to preserve their cheese or whatever they had, they would wrap it in some sort of a wax product. It was also used for burial cloths, because that was considered a way to preserve the body. There was also honey hunting. And I'm not going to talk about this, but there was a whole set of rules about honey hunting as well. Where was the tree? Whose land was it on? Did you spot that tree first? If you did, you put your mark on it, and that was your tree. And there were all kinds of rules about people stealing your honeys, but we're not going to get into that today. So again, in the early modern Europe, or early modern period in Europe and in the medieval period, they were basically keeping them in these basket arrangements, a skep. We actually have one. The club has a skep that we use in our educational kit. So next time we're at an event, you can look at that. Often, if you go into a castle or a monastery in Europe, you will see these little indented shelves in the walls. And those were they were called bowls. And that's where you would put your skep to keep it out of the rain, because it's just grass, basically. All right, so how did they harvest? Because they couldn't really pull a frame out and put it in borrow an extractor from Doug and extract it. They had to either kill the hive with sulfur smoke, or do this little thing, and this is a very old picture that I found of, they would dump one hive into another basket. Yeah, that's called driving the bees. But the technique usually was to harvest the honey that they could get from the largest hive and the smallest hive, and then leave the middle hive to overwinter. So what were they doing? They were really selecting for hives that stayed small enough to fit in that skep that hadn't swarmed. They've stayed small enough in that skep that they can manage those bees with the tools that they had. They didn't know they were doing the selection, but that's what they did. All right, so that's the atmosphere we have in the 7th century in Ireland. And so this is, like I said, Beck Bretha is the oldest legal manuscript in Ireland. And remember, back then there was no printing presses. So these were manuscripts, parchments, that were copied over and over and over by monks. And normally, there's a really good book, by the way, called How the Irish Saved Civilization. Because when everything was going really dark in the dark ages in Europe, the Irish monks were maintaining a lot of the old, Aristotle, Plato, all these old manuscripts from the ancient world were being preserved in Ireland. So this manuscript was written in the vernacular. It was written in Old Irish. Why? Because go back to what we originally talked about. This was a really important economic activity. You needed as many people as possible to understand what the rules were, okay? So even though a lot of people couldn't read, more people could read regular Irish, or Celtic, I guess, would be the language, rather than Latin. So that's why it was written. There's also some theory that this was actually written by an actual lawyer. And I think that might be right, as we'll find out. So let's move forward. So in the law, we write laws down. Those are called statutes usually. And then we also have, if we have a dispute with somebody, we take it to court. And how does the judge decide who wins? The judge decides by thinking about, well, how have I ruled on this issue before? If I haven't ruled on it, how did my brother or sister judge down the hall rule on it? That's called precedent, okay? So we're always analogizing, because no two cases are ever exactly the same. So we're always looking back, what is the case that is closest to the one that's before me right now? By the way, Bec Bretha means be judgments. So this is essentially a case book, which is what I spent 3 years reading in law school, about bees. So this lawyer, or it may have been a cleric who was also a lawyer, trained in the law, wrote this up. And so what he's doing, and I assume it's a he, what he's doing is he's trying to find circumstances that are similar to what they're going to see with a bee and making a rule about it, or writing it down, or telling people this is how you should handle this situation. So let's say I have a cow, and Peter and I live in the same little village, and my cow wanders over to Peter's wheat field and eats half of his wheat field. I'm sorry, Peter. My cow ate half of your wheat. What am I going to, now, if we didn't have law and we didn't have a system for dispute resolution, he might come over with his sword and run me through with his sword. How dare you have my cow eat half of my livelihood? But instead, they had this rule: if your animal trespasses into another property and takes something, then you owe the landowner some sort of compensation. And they actually had a rule about if your cow eats, apparently this happened a lot, if your cow eats the other person's crops, you owe them a sack of grain. So that's just how it worked. So when it came to thinking about what are we going to do with the bees, now remember, they knew enough to know the bees were flying away and coming back with something that they used to make honey. And they knew that like an apple tree, if you eat an apple blossom, there's a tiny little drop of sweetness. And they saw them on those apple blossoms. And so they knew that they were bringing home something from all these flowers that they went to. But what are they doing? They're trespassing. The bees are trespassing. So they wanted to have some way of compensating those other landowners for what as a beekeeper, I'm taking away something from your land. I therefore owe something back to you, just like I would if my cow went and ate your field. So the rule was, as far as a cow reaches on pasture until milking time, the bee reaches collecting its crop. So that trespassing created an obligation to the people that lived within this range of territory.
How do you prove it's my bee?
Thank you. We're going to get to that when we talk a little bit about damages here. But in Beck-Bretha, they say the most difficult among four pledges is a four-pledge for bee. A four-pledge is a promise. I promise if my cow eats your crop, I will give you something. I promise when my bee comes to collect something from your land, I'm going to give you something back. But now we know a lot of times the first year you have a hive, you don't get anything out of it, right? So they came up with this idea that your four nearest neighbors would get something from your hives after 3 years. Now, interesting, this even goes back to another rule they had. If my apple tree hangs over into Peter's land and there's apples on his side of the fence, they had a rule that he could keep a third of those apples, but he had to give the rest back to me for 3 years. And then the fourth year, he got to keep all of them. Well, this is almost exactly the same rule, isn't it, about bees? So the other issue, they didn't have Rocky Mountain Bee Supply, and they didn't have Shava's Blessed Bee store. So the only way they could get bees was to collect a swarm. And this is where it gets really interesting, because first of all, prove it's my swarm, right? Whoever said that. But let's assume that I see them leave. I see them leave, I chase, I run. Oh, there they are. Now they're on his tree. They're on Mark's tree. Okay, all right. So I get to come and get it, but then I'm going to have to give something back to Mark because my bees landed on his land. I read this through, I'm a lawyer. I read this stuff all the time. And I read all of the rules about swarms, and I swear to God, I could not figure it out. There were 4 different variables. Whose bees were they to begin with? Where did they land? Was the person on whose land they ended up a nobleman or a commoner? And did they land in a tree or on the ground? All these variables came into play. And thankfully, the editors of the translation I read actually put together a little chart so you could figure it out. So what would happen is that you would owe something back, and they would have, this is, I don't know if you can see that or not, but 1/3. So let's say it lands in a tree on the land of a nobleman. The nobleman has to share for 3 years with you. He gets to keep the swarm, but for 3 years he has to give 1/3 of it. He gets to keep 1/3 to his neighbors, and then I get 1/3 of the proceeds. So that's how that worked. And then you go through all these other things. But anyway, I just think that's a really fascinating thing. What I want to get to here is, I'm sure you all are feeling some sympathy for your fellow beekeepers back in the 7th century. They had the same problems that we do. I did want to read you something, though, that was kind of fun. This idea that if it's on the nobleman's land, they get a little bit more. After 3 years, the original owner is not entitled to a share of them except for fines from him. They should, that's not what I wanted to. Another case is no easier. Tracked bees which settle in the branches of a dignitary or on open land or on a spread cloth. For do not the dignitaries protect anything that comes to them? Right? They're going to make sure they get their cut. So here's it. Now we talked about whose bee is it anyway. Liability for bee stings. They also talked about this in this bee judgments. So you may recall, if you've ever learned anything about liability, landowners' liability even today, you owe a different duty of care to someone who trespasses on your land as opposed to somebody that you invite on your land or somebody who just happens to be walking by, right? So then that's very old common law. So they use the same sort of structure in deciding what happens if a bee stings someone on your property. So if the person is trespassing, if they're coming in and they're trying to steal your bees, which apparently was a thing, you don't owe them anything if they got stung. That's their issue, right? Similar to today, you do not owe a very high standard of care. You can't have a dangerous condition, but you don't owe a high standard of care to a trespasser. It's different if you have invited someone in or if somebody is actually just walking by. But here's where I know, this is what makes me think that a lawyer wrote this. Because they came up with this idea. Okay, Mark's walking by my house, he gets stung, and he said, Ann, your bee stung me. I said, oh, Mark, I'm so sorry. So I will give you some honey as long as you didn't kill the bee. This is why I think they had a lawyer. A lawyer wrote this. There's also a great case they talk about in here, the case of Congal, I think it's Congal, the one-eyed. So Congal was a king. He was originally in Northern Ireland. He eventually became king over most of the island. But a bee stung him in the eye. He was a great warrior. A bee stung him in the eye. He was blinded in one eye, and he could no longer lead his troops into battle. And it says right in here, thereby did he lose his kingdom. So this is not just a sting, right? This is a huge loss that he had. So he wanted to go after that beekeeper, right? But the courts, or whoever it was, made the decision, said, all you get is a hive. They said and that's what the rule was then, if a hive or a bee causes a serious injury, then the person who's been injured can come and take one of your hives. So we think about this, so really what Congal was wanting, he wanted vengeance. He wanted this guy's head, right? Instead, he got compensation. And that's kind of still how law works. We kind of have criminal law where we get vengeance, against somebody, and we have civil law where we get compensation. Well, let's move up to 21st century Colorado. Excuse me. And let's start with that issue of liability. Who's liable for a sting? And what kind of liability do you have as a beekeeper to your neighbors and to people that come onto your property or come by your property? There's the idea that it's because you have that property and you have something theoretically dangerous on your property, you could be liable for injuries that occur because of those bees. However, who was it that said, prove it's my bee? Here's how I imagine this going, right? Somebody sues me. Well, let's say they sue Peter, and Peter hires me as his lawyer. I will say to the person that was injured after they've been sworn in, I'm going to show you two pictures of two insects. Show me which one was the one that stung you. And I bet 9 times out of 10, they're going to point to the yellow jacket, right? In which case I say, Your Honor, motion to dismiss. Then I will say, how do you know that bee, if it was the bee? How do you know that bee, where that bee came from? Now, if they're standing right next to the hive, okay. But if they're just walking by on the sidewalk, how are they going to prove this? So when I first got into looking at the law of beekeeping, I did a deep dive. I searched in Colorado case law, trying to find some case law on this. I couldn't find any. And I think it's because people, there's some serious problems with proving that there's an injury, or that I am liable for your bee sting. Okay? But that doesn't mean you don't have a duty. You still have a duty to warn about this dangerous thing that you have on your property, okay? And you have a duty to take reasonable precautions, right? You're not going to put your beehive by your front porch where people are walking through, right? But you do have this, think about, you may put it in the right place way in the backyard, but the kids are walking across your yard as a shortcut to get to school, or something like that. I mean, there's always the possibility that there could be an injury there. So you do need to think about those things, which is why I think you should get insurance, okay? Now, I had a very interesting discussion. I told my insurance agent years ago that I was keeping bees, and I would give her honey every year. And then about a year ago, she says, oh, wait, where do you have those bees? And I told her, oh. And we went through a lot of discussion. Finally, she decided I was a small farm. And she put a rider on our homeowners policy that for a small farm, she said, we're just going to treat this like it's chickens. And so I got, it's not very much, like I want to say $25 extra a year or something like that to insure my bees. That is definitely something you want to think about. If you are a commercial beekeeper, you've probably already gone through this and thought this through. But just think in terms of what is your liability and just see if you can get that. You may have to have a real long discussion with your insurance agent about it. But I would suggest you suggest to them, I'm a small farm, and see what they do about that. You also, remember Christy talked to us a couple months ago about the Cottage Food Act. Okay, you also have liability for the products that you are selling to people. But if you follow all the rules on the Cottage Food Act, and it doesn't just mean you put that sticker on your bottle, you have to follow the rules. If you've done that, you can prove you've done it, then you should have very little liability if anybody was to come back on you about the honey. If you think about it, how can honey really go bad? If you're selling a product that meets the standard of less than 18.6% water, it shouldn't ferment. There shouldn't be anything wrong with that honey. Oh, and you put the little sticker that says, don't feed this to kids under 1 year old. That's not required, but I think you should put it on every jar of honey you give away. Let's talk a little bit about our relationships with our neighbors. I have always given all of my neighbors, just like back in Buckbretha, back in 7th century Ireland, they gave their neighbors something from the hive, right? I always give my neighbors honey. Whoops. My neighbors all get honey because I want them to know that I appreciate, and I always say, I really appreciate you being careful about pesticides, okay? And just trying to educate them. So you should probably be doing that. So we have those informal arrangements among our neighbors, don't we? But we are subject to lots of different layers. Think of it as layers of law. The bottom one, the one that's probably closest, I think of it as closest to the ground, is your homeowners association. So you need to look and see what kind of rules you have. Who is it? Richard, were you telling me you can only have 2 hives?
Beg your pardon?
Did you tell me you can only have 2 hives?
I can only, technically in my,
Technically,
I only have 1 in Centennial.
Only have 1 in Centennial. So, so those are the kinds of things where you have to keep track of that. Now, we talked about maybe a way to make it look like 1. Double screen board. This is when your knowledge is going to be superior to the person trying to enforce it. The next layer up would, of course, be your ordinances, your city ordinance, or I'm in unincorporated Arapahoe County, but there are county ordinances or county rules that I have to follow. So you'll obviously want to look at that. One of the very first things that made me twitchy as a lawyer, my lawyer twitchiness started, was when I realized that people were putting their hives on other people's land on a handshake deal. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And it seems like the standard, like people don't do put anything in writing. Think about the problems that could cause. What if you died? Okay, who's gonna take care of those bees? What if the landowner dies? His heirs come in and say, that's our hive. It's on our property. How are you going to prove it's not if you don't have something in writing? There's lots of other things, though, you need to consider. And we do have, I wrote a sort of a template for a sample hive host agreement that we have on our website that if you're a member, you have access to. So the first thing you want to think about is what kind of consideration is going to pass between the landowner and the beekeeper. Are they paying you? Are you paying them? If you're pollinating their crops, they're probably going to pay you, right? If you're just putting it on their land just because you want another place for bees, maybe you need to pay them something for that privilege, whether that's honey or money. Again, who owns the hive? Make that really clear in your agreement. Who's responsible for the insurance? In the one place I have that's off my property, I have put in my agreement that the landowner has to provide that insurance. I'm not doing it. He has to. Who's responsible for damages? Let's say, a bear comes through and damages the hive. Who's going to take the brunt of that damage? And what happens if their guests get stung by my bees? Who's responsible? How are you going to take care of it? When are you going to take care of it? Does the landowner have to tell you if they're going to spray pesticides or something like that? When can you get into it? Do they only want you to come during certain hours? Do they want you to give them notice? The agreement I have with my guy is I just send him a text. Hey, going to be down this afternoon. And he usually comes out and says hi. And how can they, so do you need a key to get through a gate? Whatever. Those are all things you need to think about. Now let's get into the present. You may not know this, but the state of Colorado actually has a statute called the Colorado Bee Act. And I have copies of this that I'll leave up here. You guys can come grab it during the break. This law calls for us to keep our bees in a movable frame hive that you can inspect. So you can't have a skep, okay? Doesn't mean you have to have a Langstroth hive. You can have a top bar. It just has to be something where we can pull out and look, okay? You have to have, it empowers this Commissioner of Agriculture to appoint a state apiary inspector who can come out and inspect your bees to make sure they're not diseased. Now, there isn't anything in the statute that gives any kind of schedule for this or any requirement that you have to have them inspected. It just says there will be a state inspector. It calls for monitoring of bee diseases, and again, doesn't really give a lot of detail about how that would happen. And it also provides, and this is a piece I think is really important, that no bees can be imported into the state without a certificate of health from their original state. It also provides for us to get a certificate for our bees if we want to move them somewhere else, so we can comply with other states who have that same requirement. Guess what? This has not been enforced since 1990. Actually, I just saw something today. Colorado was the first state in the country to have any law at all about bees and honey. It goes back to 1902 or something like that. This version is from 1963, but it was defunded in the 80s, and they totally ran out of money or any way to fund it, any part of it, in 1990. So it has not, you can do whatever the heck you want. Nobody's going to come after you. Well, let's think about that for a minute. We now are facing an existential threat to our hives, which is called the Tropolaelaps mite. All you have to do is Google Dr. Sammy Ramsey and watch one of his talks, and you come away scared straight. It's a devastating thing. Just a few weeks ago, a swarm of bees was on a cargo ship in the Atlantic. It was a swarm from Asia, and guess what it had on it? Tropolaelaps. It was headed to New Jersey. The New Jersey Commissioner of Agriculture had an apiary inspector. The apiary inspector, the Coast Guard, and thank God the captain knew what he was doing. And they froze those bees. They caught them before they came ashore. They froze them, sent them to the lab. and found out, yes, indeed, there's tropicolaps. That's how close we are coming right now to having that come into our state. The other thing I have learned recently is that, well, how many of you have had a nuke come in, you got a nuke, and it was infested with a disease like European foul brood? I know we've had people in this club, and maybe they're not here tonight. If there was some kind of a certificate that person had to get before they shipped those bees into our state, that might have been prevented. In Boulder this past summer, there was an outbreak of European foul brood, and they traced it back to some nukes that came in already infested with European foul brood. Now, if I'm a nuke producer in another state, and I want to sell them all over the country, I got to have a certificate of health if I'm going to send them to Oregon. I got to have a certificate of health if I'm going to send them to California. So I'll get my healthy ones, and I'll send those to those states. Guess who I'm sending my diseased ones to? The states that don't have that. We are sitting ducks, my friends. So I wrote an article, an op-ed piece, in the Colorado Lawyer magazine, which is our bar journal, about whether we should revive this. Now, I also have copies of this if anybody wants it. I looked around. Wyoming, interestingly, according to the USDA, Wyoming has the same number, about the same number of hives that we do. They have a similar program that in 2022 cost them all of $150,000 for the entire year. Now, I suspect that since 3 years have gone by and we're just a little bit more urbanized in our state, that it might cost a little bit more. Let's say it's $200,000. That's not a lot of money when you look at what the state budget is. Okay? Now, now the problem is they would be happy to restart this program, but the Commissioner of Agriculture says you beekeepers have to come up with the money. That's the only way it will happen as far as he or she is concerned. And in fact, they asked the beekeepers about 10 years ago, would you like to restart this program? And I tried to find somebody to tell me what really went on during that discussion, and I still haven't found anybody. But the beekeepers basically said, no, thank you. But that was before tropicolaps was looming on our horizon. So I think, and this is my opinion, it is not the opinion of the CSBA, it is not the opinion of the Southeast Beekeeping Club, it is not the opinion of the Colorado Lawyer magazine, but it is my personal opinion as Ann Atkinson. We need to find a way to fund this thing and revive it because of these threats that we're facing. I also do not think that we as beekeepers should have to pay that. Certainly, maybe we pay something. I mean, we're making money, some of us, on this hobby or this profession that we have. So we probably should pay something. But the state benefits from what we do. The state benefits from having a lively, robust beekeeping community. We have pollination happening on the western slope with the orchards. We have pollination happening on the eastern plains with the pumpkin crops and the squash crops. Up in northern Colorado, along the Front Range, there's a lot of agriculture that uses pollination services. So there is a stake. The state itself has a stake in the health of our bees. So that's my soapbox. I think that we need to at least have this discussion. Maybe we decide, nah, we're just going to go bare. We'll take our chances. We handled Varroa. We'll handle tropicolaps. We'll figure it out. And we don't want to do it. Okay, but we need to have that discussion. We shouldn't have it just land on us with nothing going on. Pete.
I think that the reason why you get a lot of pushback is because a lot of commercial beekeepers do not want an apiary inspector coming into their property and inspecting their colonies and telling them what to do. Plus, a lot of these other states, I hear all the time, a lot of these other states, they have to pay a fee per colony to the state over here.
Yeah.
I think that's why it got shoved in the carpet and forgot about because beekeepers don't want to pay.
Beekeepers don't want to, they don't want to be the sole funders of this program. Absolutely. And that's why I argued in my article that we shouldn't have to be.
Some of these state beekeepers are pretty intrusive.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, the other thing though that our law calls for, interestingly, is an advisory committee that is almost entirely beekeepers. That calls for a representative from like the Platte, it's the Platte River drainage and the Arkansas drain. They divided up the state by the drainages. So the Arkansas, the Colorado, the Platte, and then the president of the State Beekeeping Association and somebody else, just a random beekeeper. So I think that if we had a situation where we had an inspector that was overstepping their response, making life difficult, you would have that advisory board able to come in and rein them in a little bit. This is also an opportunity. Maybe if we go to the legislature and we say, we'd like you to refund it, here's our proposal, we could get changes made to the law if we decide we don't like something that's in this, or we want to restrict the responsibility of the apiary inspector. We have that opportunity to do that. So, any other questions, comments? Yeah. Oh, by the way, I have talked to younger beekeepers who have commercial beekeepers, and I heard this summer they said, you know what, we'd be okay with having an inspector. And it's because of tropicale lapse. They're just freaked out by that. So
you got to be careful how much you try to regulate. With the flight of bees, you start discouraging people from wanting to do it. We understand that there is a problem, and you start getting government involved. I'm not an anti-government guy at all, but you start regulating, you're going to have a lot of people stop doing bees, and if you have people stop doing bees, we're going to have a bigger problem on our hands than the mites. Now, I agree there's a problem there. That is, we shouldn't be letting anything come in from other countries and stuff like that. I agree 100%. We got enough resources here in our country to sustain what we have. And I do believe that, it should be segregated from regions. Okay? I don't think that the people from Texas should be bringing their bees up here with the, we're getting lots of, every year now I'm getting people call me up and ask me, do I sell things for beetles, the beetle traps.
Oh,
and
small
stuff.
hive beetles, that's another thing.
And I'm
Yep.
like, what?
Right.
Where do you get your bees? I mean, we don't have hive beetles
Right.
here, but if you keep bringing them up from down in,
Together.
but that is, minute compared to bringing stuff in from out of the country in. And yes, things are going to migrate slowly. And that's what our EPA is all about, is to say, hey, we're getting this moving in, like killer bees and stuff going.
The EPA has nothing to do with it. They only regulate pesticides. The only federal government agency that could be involved with this would be APHIS, which is a division of the USDA.
Well, then there you go.
But they are not going to be able to handle, they can't control whether we have nukes being imported into the state of Colorado that have foul brood in them. They don't care. They're not involved with that. That's our responsibility as Coloradans. If we don't care, that's fine. But let's have that discussion. We need to have that discussion.
And are you aware where the funding goes? They're selling these license plates, right? Pollinator-friendly license plates.
Oh,
They keep
yeah.
seeing them around. Where's that profit going?
That is going, if I'm remembering correctly, that is going to promote pollinator health in general, not bees, not honeybees.
Okay.
So they like the pollinator highway, I-76 from here to Nebraska is supposedly the pollinator highway. And they went out and planted a whole bunch of wildflower seeds that lasted for a year. And now there aren't any there. But that's the kind of thing that's supposed to go for.
The license plate?
The license, yeah.
That's through pollinator.
People and pollinators. People and Pollinators Action
So
Network.
everything goes to them, and then they're
Yeah.
taking the money and funding.
They're doing
different
projects.
things.
Yeah.
So it's not going to the government at all, it goes to them directly.
But I keep looking at what Wyoming spends $150,000 to have an inspector. It just doesn't seem like a lot of money when we're talking about a state budget. So.
And there's a question on the internet.
Oh, good. What is that?
They thought that the Colorado law that you had to provide a beekeeper notice if you're going to spray pesticides on a crop.
That's something different. That is a pesticide regulation. U.S. Department. This is a different thing. This is about apiary inspectors.
Licensed pesticide applicators.
Yeah, and they don't actually do a very good job of it. I've had my hives registered on Field Watch for 8 years, and these guys show up and spray next door to me and never even call me.
I've never had no call. I've had it.
Oh, really? Do they call you?
Every year.
Really?
I updated on this watching. Nobody's never called me.
Yeah. Yeah. I run out screaming, do you not see there are beehives right here? Oh, we didn't see those.
I think if you look at that on that gift watch when they send that information every year, it's within like 300 doors of beehives. Well, that's like a year's growth.
Yeah. This law wouldn't help with that. That's a whole different can of fish. Kettle of fish, whatever. All right. Well, anyway, that's my opinion. That's the law of beekeeping. Here's my article. Here's the law that is on the books but unenforced. If we run out of these copies, I've got a clipboard here. You can give me your email, and I'll email these things to you. Okay? Oh, we have one more question over here.
You said Wyoming is at 150K. How many inspectors do they have, and how many are just running papers?
How many are what? I'm sorry?
How many inspectors do they have in the field, or how many people are just in office?
I don't know. All I know is that the USDA says that they have the similar number of hives as we do. Hives, not beekeepers, but hives.
I'd like to know.
That would be good to know.
Find out how many inspectors they actually have, and if those inspectors are actually trained on bees. Because I was watching a program with some commercial beekeepers, and there was like 4 of them, and they were talking about, and they're on the East Coast, but they were talking about how the regulators are coming in and taking down the number of hives and doing the inspections. But the problem is that the in-office, they don't have the knowledge of, you're gonna lose 5 hives. So even though you have 10 hives on your property, only 5 are active. And then you can have 7. They're not equipped for the flexibility. So do the Wyoming apiary inspectors have the ability to come in and not only check for the mites, for the diseases, because there's more than just, foul brood. There's the chalk brood, there's the wing, all that stuff. Do they have people who are experienced at that? And what's their number? And how flexible can they be? Can they be flexible like the hives are?
And I don't know the answer to that. But like I said, if we do this, we have the opportunity to set those parameters. It's kind of an opportunity here to make this what we want it to be.
How would you be able to convince them though? I mean, you're a lawyer, you convince people.
We have to tell the legislature this is how we want it done. Fund it with this money, we'll put in this money, and oh, by the way, change section such and such to say whatever. And some of that too, this is the statute, this is getting in the weeds. Statutes are kind of like the overall rules, and then regulations are what is written to actually carry out the statute. So the regulations are subject to notice and comment, and that's what the Commissioner of Agriculture would do. So actually there is a whole other piece that is the regulations that he established back in the 60s. And that was probably something that, just given the passage of time, we would need to revise because they didn't have varroa mites in 1963.
They didn't have the science that we have now too.
Right. So anyway, all right, any other questions before we're done? Okay, great.
Thank you, Ann.
Alrighty then. And now it's time for a break. See you in a few minutes.
You know the
That was really, really, really awesome.
We will be right back.
Am I on a hot mic right now?
No, I mean, it's coming from here.
waltz, right?
Yeah.
As soon as she's done. So we've got a question. I've got a question. So Richard spent 30 hours on that, and he's donating it to the club. Christy's not here tonight, and I'd rather Christy Ledgerwood. I haven't seen her out there.
No, she's not.
We were gonna give the golden bee to her tonight,
But we should give it
but
to him
I think
tonight.
we should give it to him. It takes a little bit of time to regroup. Not only that, but I wanted to give him an extra 5 or 10.
You're going to talk about that in this?
So this was
Mackenzie.
Mackenzie. Who's Mackenzie? Can you point her out?
In the pink glasses at the back.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she's donated this to us? Or
Yes. And she's, this is for our education booth, but she made a second one that's a little smaller that's going to be in the December raffle.
Very cool.
So I am saving really good stuff for December's raffle.
That's good.
So movie and food and a raffle.
I'll try to get my wife to come to that.
Is my proposal for December.
Makes sense to me. You'd think I'd learn not to stand in front of the projector. Doesn't always work. Actually, before we get into the CSBA winter meeting. Before we get into the CSBA winter meeting, there's a few other things that I think we're going to bring up. First, I'd like to point out that some people have been very creative and have made some pretty awesome devices and items. One is this 3D printed hive, which is completely accurate. Has a top board. It's got honey supers, honey frames. It even comes with its own hive tool. So if I have trouble getting it out, I can use the little hive tool. Anyway. And this, as I understand it, has been donated to our club as part of our educational materials. So very, very cool.
Wow. Is that a 3D printed model?
It is. Whoops. And
where are the bees?
so they come in the 3D printed package from California. Okay, now I got to put it back together.
It takes a while.
Okay. Anyway, I wanted to point that out. And I also wanted to point out another item up here. This is, I'm sure you've seen it sitting here. This is quite a beautiful observation hive. Open this guy up and look at this. You can put a 5-frame nuke in here, 4 in the bottom, I believe.
Yeah, the
and,
bottom's a 5-frame nuke.
Okay, and then up on the top here, you've got your visible frame, and then a queen separator that allows the queen to stay up here and be visible by everybody. This is amazingly high quality work. And donated it to and I don't know, you got to come up here and take a look at it. The quality is just amazing. I wanted to point that out before we begin. And the next thing is we have a interesting tool that Vance is going to talk about just briefly.
Yes. I'm a slow learner, so after years of wrestling 70 or 80 pound deeps and knowing I was going to help Janice treat her hives this last weekend, like all good old farts, I had a 3 a.m. in the morning epiphany and invented a tool for lifting the hives. And do we have any engineers in the room? I'll speak very slowly.
Yeah.
So, imagine this is a.
I'll give you his address here.
This is very technical. So, part of my challenge is doing things with stuff that I already have in my garage and seeing how far I can go. And my original design had pulleys and bells and whistles. It was, Thomas Edison, step aside. It was great. And my son came over, college educated, and said, well, Dad, why don't you do it this way? And simplified my design terribly. Basically what it is using leverage. You put this on. First, you move the upper hive just a half an inch or so, so that you've got a lip here. This is a piece of 3/4 inch a channel, and you put it, because our boxes are 3/4 inch wide, and you can lift as far as you want. It's being stopped by the stage. While someone else puts the pads in or whatever else, you could do it yourself, but not very easily because you need to be further down the handle. But you finish it and take this off and go on to the next. And we actually used it on Janice's.
It works really well.
And it really beats wrestling these things and trying to tip them up. And we just went hive to hive to hive. So if anybody wants to replicate it, and feel free to refine it, because I'm sure this is somewhat crude, but it's simple and it works. And
What is the main pole that you're holding?
this is a piece of steel. It's a square piece of steel. I imagine you could use a 1-inch or heavier wood dowel, but if this truly is 70 to 80 pounds, you're putting quite a bit of weight on it. And I just happen to have this square piece of angle iron, or whatever they call it. And I had these other pieces that I scrounged in my garage. So that's how it came to be.
How much damage did you do 3 o'clock to do this?
Actually, I got up and drew it out on a piece of paper. And then at first light, it took about a half an hour to put it together. So anyway, any of you that have hurt backs, you can thank me.
Thank you, Vance. All right, so this last Saturday, the CSBA had their winter meeting. A lot of people attended. It was a pretty good event. We had speakers, and some of the people in this room here were in attendance as well, and feel free to jump in and add to anything that I have to say, because I'm obviously not going to be able to capture everything in the time, about what happened there. But we had some pretty good speakers. The first one was Corey Stevens, and he talked about, he had 2 topics that he talked about. One was cell builders that don't suck. I love that title. And why you should consider virgin queens. So the first topic that he built, cell builders that don't suck, was all about basically creating environments where the bees were able to successfully grow themselves. And I'm going to completely get the topic wrong, but I wish I could have had a copy of the program to share with you. But he does have a web channel out there, and if you go YouTube for his name, he's got quite a lot of really good topics. He's a soft-spoken gentleman, and very, very well presented. The other speaker was Rogan Tokach, recent PhD, very energetic, very interested, and he provided an overview of Varroa management. And one of the things that I'm just curious, anybody who has attended there, what did you guys take away from these speakers? For me, the Rogan's talk was quite interesting, and it was surprising to me. Vance?
Well, what was really interesting is this Rogan. Energetic is tame. Brand new minted PhD. Very, very excited about his topic, and all about well, treating the mites and all that. The very next guy, or did he go first? I forget.
He went second.
Yeah. A guy, a good old boy from Missouri.
Corey Stevens.
Yeah, Corey Stevens, really nice guy. But the takeaways that nobody seemed to catch is he quit his day job to do this queen rearing full time. Now, how many of us can quit our day jobs and do what we love to do full time? But the most significant thing to me is that he said, I quit treating my hives 15 years ago. And
Specifically for Varroa.
well,
He's
yeah,
not the big
specific.
breeds. He's been doing that for years.
Yeah.
Right, right.
But here's a guy gets his PhD for killing mites, and here's a guy that, and nobody seemed to pick up on it.
It was a great counterpoint. I love that. I love that counterpoint. The fascinating piece about that, though, is that the reason he quit 15 years ago is because he purposely wanted to build a strain of queens that was Varroa resistant, that was going to participate in hygienic behavior, right, and still be a good set of honey-producing bees. And so I thought that was a really interesting piece. And he said that the gentleman with the PhD gentleman, the takeaway for me was he was talking about the effectiveness of different types of treatments, and he had all these studies, which one was the most effective, which one was the least effective, and what was surprising to me is that his conclusion was that oxalic acid was the least effective, and I was like, but then I noticed that in his presentation, though, it's like they would do one treatment and then wait 3 months and do one treatment and then wait 3 months and then do one treatment, and it's like, well, of course it was ineffective.
Yeah, and even when they're doing multiple treatments, they're 7 days apart, which is enough time for the Varroa to reinfest in the milk and brood. So it was a completely ineffective data point.
And they were doing dribbles. He didn't have any data about vape.
He had one data point about vape. He had one data point about vape. Yep.
Yeah, but at the end of it, I turned to Pam and said, "But okay, so what's the takeaway?" And like you say, he claimed that oxalic was not as effective as.
One thing that he did say, which is my experience, is that if you use the strips, the oxalic strips with glycerin in it, that they will maintain your mite levels, but not rapidly decrease, which is their purpose. That's their intent. That's exactly what they're supposed to do. So the use of the strips prevents you from having a massive spike in your Varroa, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't do other forms of treatment.
So that's I always recommend that people do the regimen every 4 days, 5 times. Yeah. Right? And then coming into the winter, then you do the Randy Oliver mite, the time-release oxalic acid mite strips, pads. And then you put those on in the wintertime. I did that last year, and every hive that I put them on came out real strong. Now, I'm doing it again this year. We'll see.
I've been doing it for 2 years,
Yeah.
and it's really been effective for me. But
Yeah.
I'm strictly OAV.
Right.
Other than that, but every 4 days, 3 to 4 days, I used to do Monday and Friday to keep it simple, stupid.
Right.
Do it every Monday and Friday for 3 weeks, and then see what drops if you got screen bottom boards.
Yeah.
And if you're under 20, you're done with your treatment. I'll put OAV pads in the last week of May, and I'll change them OAV pads the first week of September for the winter treatment. But they've been really effective for me, and that's all I use.
Right. Yeah, you're using a dribble or the pads?
Pads, dribble.
Pads, right.
Dribble, you can't do multiple
Yeah,
doses
it's only good for
because
that
they
treatment.
ingest that sugar water and it's bad for their gut.
Right.
dribble is really problematic. I don't know why they even promote it.
If you haven't looked at the Randy Oliver, you can look it up.
And Scientific Beekeeping is his website. A lot of good information on oxalic acid. And he does a lot of dribble. He's in California, but it worked for him because he could get in his hives in the middle of winter because it's warm.
Mm-hmm.
You ain't gonna break your hive open in the middle of November to do a dribble.
Right. But the idea is 500 milligrams, it's weight, not volume, 500 milligrams of oxalic acid powder to 500 milligrams of the
Glycerin.
Yeah, glycerin. I can't say that word, so I'm not reading it. But anyway, and you heat it up, and you don't want to get it over 165 degrees. So you heat it up slow, mix it, and when it comes clear like water, then you just pour that on your pads. 24 hours later, you're good to put them in your hives. 2 per hive. That's an equivalent. 2 per hive is what they recommend.
Okay, now are you doing the wide strips or the narrow strips?
No, just the pad, about 3 inches wide.
Okay,
you just lay it right on top
they've done some
between the
studies
2.
afterwards, and Randy Oliver's gone to 4 narrow strips rather than 2 wide strips. And
Whatever,
found
but
out
it's the
more
same.
effective.
So what you're doing is you're putting 5
It's
or
the same
10
square
milligrams, 10 grams of oxalic in there on a time release between the 2 boxes, and it does maintain. So I'm just, I did it last year, I'll get it again this year, and I'll give you a report when,
You know what I found is, and Peter, we did that workshop at my house. They're so easy to make, but they are experimental.
And they're cheap.
Yeah, they're cheap. They're so cheap. So cheap.
It costs like
When you do a pad, they're so easy.
I totally agree. Very effective, very cheap, not hard to make at all.
What was your takeaway, Peter?
About that particular thing,
Yeah.
the takeaway was that I was surprised at his conclusion that vaporization was not effective. But again, I don't think that he followed the recommended process.
Who studied with PhD? So his main work was on looking at amatraz resistance in Varroa. And so he did show that they are developing resistance to the amatraz, which is
And
var. I always get them mixed up.
And he had a really cool way of detecting it and showing about it.
Yeah, in the workshops, he actually showed a way to figure out if your mites are resistant or not. And he went through this whole little process. It was basically you expose them to the amatraz and for 2 hours, and then you mite wash them. And you see what the difference is on your mite drop from the amatraz alone versus what you didn't get with the amatraz.
And to be fair, some of the data that he was showing were not his studies. They were incorporating other studies. So some of those things may not be what he was actually doing.
Right. I don't think he got his PhD in how to use oxalic acid. It was the other things. Yeah. So we had some interesting demonstrations, and one of them was what we just talked about, testing bees for amatraz. Decision-making flow charts. This was an interesting one where a member of the community he says, you know what, I really hate getting a block of text trying to explain how to do something. I don't know, how many people just look at a block of text and say, I'm not even gonna bother. I'm totally there, I understand that. And so what he wanted to do was take knowledge and put it into a decision tree matrix, where you have a picture and you follow that. He's like, okay, I'm trying to do this, whatever this is. Like, I'm gonna catch a swarm. Well, okay, what do I need to think about when I'm catching the swarm? And walk through the process and, okay, where is the swarm? Is it really a swarm? Or is it a bunch of, something else, like hornets? Don't want to collect hornets. Anyway, so he had this whole concept, and he got the whole membership, everybody who was present, to contribute their thoughts to these decision-making trees. And then he was going to take all that information and eventually collate it and publish it as a completed product. And so at some point you may see some really good flip books with decision trees about various beekeeping processes. So that was a cool demonstration. So the National Honeybee Survey, this was in regards, we actually had a talk about that in this forum a few months ago, and that was determining what's going on with the mite infestations and the health of bees throughout the country, and that was interesting. Wax dipping leaves. They had flattened leaves that had been squished flat in books and such, and then dipped in wax and turned into various decorations that you could use. Actually quite pretty. And performing a Harbo assay. So Harbo assay is kind of interesting. It's you're counting. You're literally taking a frame of bees and you're opening up capped brood, pulling out the appropriately aged capped brood, I should say, and then looking inside to see how many mites do I see. Literally counting the number of mites that you see inside each cell. And you're supposed to pull like 100 out of a frame and count those mites. So you're not doing a mite wash. You're very specifically pulling out all that. And the reason that you're doing an assay, the reason for that assay is to determine how hygienic your bees are. It's like, are they taking those infected bees out before they get to that level of development? And if you have a very high number, well, then your bees aren't very hygienic. If you have a fairly low number, then they are very hygienic. And there's a scale that determines that. And
it's determining whether they're reproductive mites or non-reproductive mites makes a difference in the Harbo assay as well.
Did you guys see any mites? I didn't see any mites in there.
I was standing 3.5 feet away, and so I couldn't really see any mites.
So the other thing that I thought was interesting was comparing what you're really measuring in a Harbo assay versus the UBO, which Brian talked about last year with us. The UBO product is where you spray a chemical on a little section of capped brood, and it's the same smell as diseased bees. And then you go back 2 hours later and you count how many of those have the bees taken out and gotten rid of. The difference with the Harbo assay, well, so really all you're doing in the UBO is you're measuring the bee's ability to detect disease, whereas the Harbo assay is actually looking at how good are your bees at getting rid of mites.
Now, did Brian
Not the
survive?
disease.
Did he happen to mention he went down to Missouri to Corey Stevens did a workshop on harvest?
That's
and
what-
he was
yeah.
going to do a YouTube video on it. Did he ever get that out yet?
I don't think so.
No, not yet.
Because
Corey who was there.
This Corey was there.
Corey was there on Saturday.
yeah, but he had said on one of his live streams he's going to put out a YouTube video on it. I just wondered if it was
This
mentioned.
should be one of the things that they're gonna do at the state level is the people that went to Corey's road trip are going to be able to be available to clubs to actually demonstrate Harbo assays in person as part of the outreach for the sustainability group.
I remember him mentioning on one of the live streams it's pretty tedious.
Yeah. Well, and the idea is you do this so that you can then decide, is this a queen I want to propagate? Do I want to get more queens like this? Do I want to
Right.
breed this queen?
Right.
Or do I want to skip that and go? So you pick, it's basically you're doing what he did over many, many years, which was to select for hygienic stock.
And it's interesting because Corey said that a lot of times they won't uncap the ones that have non-viable mites. They're only pulling out the ones with reproductive mites.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting.
Which means they can detect that.
Yeah.
He puts out a lot of YouTube videos,
Yeah.
Chris Stevens does. Very interesting speaker, soft spoken, very interesting. And he won't let his colony crash for mice. He will treat them the way rather than let them crash. To be fair, I would be totally treating this.
Yeah, both of these speakers were really good, and these were excellent demonstrations. So they picked, there was some voting. They picked a new president, Brian Zavada. Stays as president, actually. He was vice president, and the president, unfortunately, Kathy Gill, had to step down, and Brian took that role. Previously vice president. Alyssa Glover was elected vice president. Katie Thompson was elected treasurer again. And our very own Ann Atkinson is secretary. So there was the Big Money Honey Contest. This is very cool, actually, and it's something to, I don't know, some people like to compete, some people just want to watch. We had 35 contestants, 85 entries. I think that's the largest number that we've ever had in recent history, in any case. One of the differences is that we're, instead of judging, like the last several years we were judging based on our own criteria. This time we had 3 external judges from other states come in and do the judging, and it was all done according to the standards of the American Honey Show Training Council. So this is a national organization where they establish very specific standards. Instead of, it's not relative, it's absolute. Instead of saying, well, this one's better than that, so you get a blue ribbon, even if it's not really very good, they're saying, nope, the minimum standard is this, and if you don't meet it, you don't get a blue ribbon. At best, you're going to get a second place. And maybe even only a third place. So it's possible that they would say, sorry. So what's also interesting is that they give 6 places, ribbons for 6 places. They only announced the first 3 verbally in front of everybody else, but you get 6 levels of indicator of the quality. And that's actually pretty good because if you get a 4th place or a 5th place, you'd be like, oh, I see where I rank. If I really want to compete next year for a 3rd or 2nd or 1st, you kind of get an idea. And the other thing that was really cool, in my opinion, is because these are national level judges and they're trained, they gave feedback. So they would actually write on it, hey, this was really good. Hey, you could improve in this area. Hey, you might try doing this instead next time. Which I thought was really, really good. Because it's not just about beating somebody else, it's about making a better product as well. So I thought that feedback was really, very cool. And in terms of winners, we do have, let's see, it was, she's going to get it. So they had a new category called Black Jar Honey. And what black jar honey is when you just pour honey in a black jar, so you can't see it, and they judge it based on taste, solely on taste. And there was only one winner chosen because they weren't going to grade them top to bottom. They were just going to pick the best one. And the best in show for that was, I'm going to get her name right, Shava, look, yeah, owner of Blessed Bee. So she won that one. And we have a picture here. First place, honorable mention for the entire show, this picture right here, taken by Ann Atkinson. So anybody have any other topics they want to bring up about the CSBA winter meeting or questions in general? Oh, yes, no, okay. Well, in that case, we can move on to Crud Cutter Confessions. So this is the time where you get to explain to us about that one moment in time when you probably did not want anybody to see what you were doing? Anybody have some interesting stories of strange occurrences that might have happened?
So I unexpectedly missed last month, so this is from the month before, but about a month and a half ago, I had finished honey harvest, had done all the extraction, had my DIY uncapping tank, and I wanted to try to get as much honey out of it as possible, try to kind of maximize the harvest. So I had it sitting in another plastic bin in the backyard, and I was going to go work in the hives, finish up some stuff in there. And I went and checked it, put a thermometer in there, make sure it's not getting too hot. Went, did some stuff, checked the thermometer again, make sure it's not getting too hot, went, did stuff, did it again, got into the hives, 30, 45 minutes or so, and finished up that stuff, go back up, and this just chaos. I think every bee in the neighborhood, every wasp, every hornet was in there. Apparently, I had not put the lid all the way back on the last time. So there was everything around it, everything in it, everything in the honey, bees are drowning, writhing and all that type of stuff. It's just me. Luckily, I was in my bee suit. So I'm take the lid off it, and I'm swatting them all out. So I don't know how many bees I destroyed that way. Of course, that let more bees into it. So then I decided I'm going to smoke everything, and that's probably not the approved way of smoking your honey because it does now have a little bit of a smoky taste. Ran downstairs, tried to get another bin, put a tarp on it, trying to figure out a way to get the bees out of it, not let bees more get in it. Finally got it under control. But then I had this okay, do I save this honey? So I'm doing all the internet search, can you eat honey? Can you save honey? Can you whatever honey that has bees that have died or drowned or whatever in it? I didn't see anything that was bad, right? I didn't know what had been excreted in it, stress hormones and stuff. So anyhow, the moral of the story is if you're going to do that and do the best intentions, put the lid back on the honey capping tank. But now I'm gonna set that honey aside to make mead. So if my mead has a little bit smoky flavor, that was intentionally done. So yeah, put the lid back on.
So you can have crunchy honey.
Well, the other part of that is I strained it all out. So I had this bag of bees in honey preserved. But as I heated it up to strain it, the bees started coming back alive. Oh! So I started having these wriggling things. So yeah, I dumped it in a bag of soapy water, or a thing of soapy water, just put them out of misery and just tossed it. I still have the honey though.
You had one?
I had one. So sort of a similar situation. I'm getting ready for this honey contest, right? And so I want to enter my honey. But my neighbor calls and says, hey, I want to buy 4 pounds of honey from you. Okay, fine. So I have my honey in my little Queen Line 1 pound jars. I put 5 of them in my oven because the honey is crystallized at this point. And my way of doing it is I put it in the oven and I just turn the light on. Just the light is enough heat to decrystallize. So I do that, set it up, and then I go out in the garage because I need to make some more of these sugar board things because now I have 11 hives. So I'm out there working away. And while I'm out there working, the lights in the garage flicker. Well, that's interesting. Working away. I go back into the house about an hour later, and there is something burning. And I said to my husband, who's standing in the kitchen, I have to say, we've been married 44 years. Okay. What's burning? And he just points to the stove, and on a tray, there are my 4 jars of my last 4 pounds of honey, besides what I'm going to enter in the contest. And I had plastic lids on them, and the plastic had melted down into the jar. So he just pointed at it. I said, what did you do? And he says, I was going to make dinner. And I turned on the oven. And I said, didn't you see the light on? It was in there. And he says, no, the light wasn't on. I said, yes, it was. Well, remember the lights flickered? So the electricity went off enough that it turned off the light in the oven. And so he didn't see any heat. The light was off. So he just turned it on to heat it. So all those got dumped. Thankfully, I looked back in my bucket. I was able to scrape out another 4 pounds of honey, and I was able to sell that to my neighbor. But yeah. Plastic
Oh my. Oh, we've got the third. Okay.
So I know we don't want people to see when we make these mistakes. So this worked out really nice for me and my dad, who are gonna vape our bees. And we get one hive done, and we go inside to do something, and we come out, and it's too dark for us to do it. So we're like, oh, okay. We'll use the chicken headlights. We put our headlights on, and we go out, and we're setting up, and the bees start coming out. Man, what? This is weird. What are they doing? Usually they're asleep. So we get everything ready. We go to hit the button, and the bees are pissed and are just chasing us, and we cannot figure out what's happening. And he and I split apart, and we're running through. We live on 5 acres. We're running through the forest, and the bees are just chasing after us, and he trips and knocks his headlamp off, and he goes, "Oh my God, your headlamp!" They're following my headlamp as I go around. And so here I am like this little tiny dot in the dark where you can't see me except for the bees who are like, she's up to something. And follow me all the way around until I can get to a flat spot where I can take my headlamp off so I don't run into a tree. And both of us received several stings and chose to vape the bees in the morning instead. So that was my in the dark story.
Wow. Okay, that was nice. So, what we're going to do then is we're going to vote on the best one, and whoever has the best story will win a container of Crud Cutter, a bottle of Crud Cutter, which is really, really good at cleaning propolis and other sticky stuff, and not at all dangerous to bees, from my experience anyway. So, by a show of applause, let's see. First one, open bee container. Melted caps. And bees chasing the headlamp. Awesome! Congratulations!
Oh, thank you. I will share.
That's why you wear a red headlamp.
Well, and it even has a red setting. Like, I can't believe I didn't think about that. Great. Next time, though.
So, we have another tradition here, and that is to award the Golden Bee to a member of our club who has done service to the club or otherwise improved our membership in some way. And this month, we would like to present the Golden Bee, 3 guys.
He's the one who made the demonstration hive. He spent over 30 hours doing it.
29 hours drinking beer and 1 minute.
It's all about organizational skills. What do you do first? Okay, we're coming up on a raffle. We've got a lot of things to raffle off, but not these two.
Yeah. We are not raffling this off. Okay.
I think we're going to cut it off now.
Smaller things this month because I've been saving up for really bigger